So I think it is crazy that, somebody looked at the Bible and he named Samson the baddest boy in the Bible. It is crazy because I think there is no bigger lie and there is no bigger propaganda to that fact. Because, what happened to a person like David? What happened to a person like Solomon? How in the world are they better than Samson in the real sense of the matter? But for ages, for centuries, preachers, pastors, bishops and men of God have continued in that singular narrative of calling Samson a lecher, a womanizer, a woman rapper. They've given him so many names. But we have one person who killed his friend, a trusted friend who killed, a warrior, just so that he can be able to take away that whole guilt of impregnating a soldier who was on the battlefield. We have another man, who had 300 wives and 700 concubines. 300 wives and 700 concubines, and those are the ones that the Bible itself can record. And still, we say that the baddest boy in the Bible, that the baddest boy in the scripture, that the baddest boy is Samson. Could it be because Samson was not wealthy? He was just only strong. Could it also be because, people like Solomon were very wealthy and, we like to play that narrative of David the saint, Solomon the wise man, and then Samson is the sinner. We're talking of a person like Solomon who sacrificed children to Moloch. He sacrificed children to Moloch because of women. And still the preachers and the pastors and everybody continues to say that Samson was worse than every other person. And this is not even to cast aspersion on David and Solomon. This is to say that we must be careful of the singular narrative. We must be able to look at narratives and say, of a truth, what exactly are we speaking to the facts here? Or are we just following a narrative that everybody has been following all through? We're talking of Solomon who built temples for other gods. Solomon built temples for other gods. We're talking about David whose, ways with women was already known. It was so known that even when he was about to die, it is recorded that a virgin was brought to him so that we can check and verify that of a truth he is dying. That is Solomon and his father David. But indeed, we still continue to say that perhaps because the Bible recorded that Samson at some point went to see one of the harlots, and then he is the baddest boy in the Bible. And this is not to excuse Samson. Let's make it very clear. This is not to excuse Samson. This is not to say that any sin is greater than any sin. This is not to say that, he was a righteous man. That's not basically what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the narrative. Solomon had concubines. And you see, if we also say it was because Samson went outside the fold to marry a woman, we must ask ourselves, how many of Solomon's wives, how many of Solomon's concubines were heathens? That's the kind of question we must begin to ask ourselves. How many of them were heathens? Now, could it be that what we have been doing all along in the church, could it be that what the church has been doing all along has been to tarnish the image completely of Solomon? And that's the way they tarnish the image of strong people. When a person is strong, we become very insecure. When a person is strong, we begin to ask ourselves that, are you sure they're not going to take our places? We begin to try to attack their strength. We begin to try to see how we can diminish their excellence. We begin to see how we can bring them down because it feels like their strength makes us feel small, makes us feel weak. It makes us, we can now see as in a mirror our own, deficiencies. I dare you to name one woman, aside that harlot who was recorded in the Bible that Samson did not go to marry. I dare you to say that there was one woman in the Bible that Samson went after, that it was not for love and he did not want to marry them. Solomon's wives. Yet, we still name Samson as the baddest boy in the Bible. Again, it's the kind of thing that goes on in the world. When one person pushes a narrative, we begin to see that narrative as the only thing that everybody must continue to speak about. And that is a very scary thing. It is a very scary thing to allow one narrative to be what we continue to look at. And so when you go to the life of Samson, what if the stronger man, that strongest man that we know, what if that man, the only reason he fell prey to some of the problems he had was that as strong as a man is, the stronger a man is, the bigger his heart. And the bigger his heart, the more he's more susceptible to falling prey to a woman of that nature, like we call Delilah. Because such a woman, there are some women who, when they see that you are falling completely in love with them, then they begin to take advantage. Could it be that this strong man with his big heart sees in those hidden women something that he wants to save, something that he wants to rescue, something that he wants to, bring them out of danger? But he underestimated what it takes when a woman believes, or when some women rather believe, that you are falling too much in love with them. He overestimated his own power to save them, and underestimated what it takes sometimes when some women see that you have fallen in love with them, that you have given your heart to them, that you have become vulnerable to them. Could it be that the strong man with a big heart did not understand this? And then we have pastors and preachers who continue to shame him. We like to shame in the church. We like to make people feel unworthy before their Father. That is what we've continued to hammer upon. So we call him the lecher. We call Samson the womanizer, David the saint, Solomon the wise man. We do not like the fact that perhaps Samson rose, from something that was almost nothing. We do not like that fact. Perhaps that is what we are fighting against. Can we have pastors today? Can we have preachers today who can look for a new sermon from the Samson case? Can we have somebody who takes the jawbone story? The person takes the jawbone story with emphasis not on the strength of Samson, but emphasis on something like Monroe said, where, that's what we used to fight the battle of yesterday cannot be what we continue to use to fight the battles of today. That the weapons that we used to fight the wars of yesterday cannot be the same weapons that we continue to use to fight the battles of today. Because if you bring a jawbone to the fights we have today, you'll be finished. That's a man who thought about the Samson story in a different light. How many of our pastors are thinking of these narratives in the Bible? The Bible says new every morning, the words are new every morning, but we still have not left the singular narrative of Samson being a lecher, womanizer, woman rapper. We have not left that narrative. That is the only narrative. But you see, can your pastor go beyond making a mockery of Samson, and then he goes to going to that part where the failure is not what we are looking at? Because somewhere in Hebrews 11, Paul says, "And what more shall I say? For time will fail me if I could not speak of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets." And guess whose name was missing from that heroes list that I have just called? Of course, you guessed right. Solomon. His name was not there. Ladies and gentlemen, Samson was listed in the Hall of Fame. That was what happened. He was there. But King Solomon wasn't even mentioned there. And still, we have the narrative that Samson is the baddest boy in the Bible. We have called him lecher, womanizer. We have called him a failure who died because of women. Yet, he is in the Hall of Fame of faith. That Hall of Faith is where he is. That Hall of Fame in the glory. That Hall of Faith. That's what it is. The Hall of Fame of glory. That is the Hall of Faith. Samson, his name is there. And then many of your pastors, many of your bishops, many of your preachers, many of your teachers, many of those in your churches, their name will never get into the Hall of Faith because their faith has no action. Faith is a verb, but their own faith has no action. Faith has to have works. But you have no works. There are no works. But yet you call Samson a lecher. You call Samson a womanizer. You call him a woman rapper. You see, the gospel of the kingdom is grace. It is hope. It is faith. It is salvation. It is salvation. It is not trying to look for where the fault is and where the flaws are and forgetting the side of grace. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about real faith. We're talking about real grace. We're talking about the gospel of the kingdom. See, you needed to have read beyond the negatives, because when we go to Judges 16 verse 30, it tells everyone to shut up when it comes to Samson. Why? Because James 2:13 tells me that mercy rejoiceth over judgment. And it is for this that when a man like Samson pleads with the Lord for one last time to exhibit faith, the Lord grants his servant the request. Why? Because mercy rejoiceth over condemnation. Mercy rejoiceth over judgment. That grace is greater than every condemnation that has been attached to the name of Samson. Friends, some people can also argue that, oh, it's because of women that he did not live so long. I hear your argument. I can't doubt your argument. But you see, you can live long like Methuselah, but the point is, what is your impact? What did you leave? What did you do? What exactly did you achieve? That is where the real question is. Jesus died at 33. Let's be very clear. He died at 33, and for generations and generations afterwards, we have continued to think about Jesus, follow Jesus. Many people, millions, billions, generations have continued to speak about Jesus, about his death, about his birth, about his resurrection, about his soon return. All those are the narratives for somebody who died only at 33, was not even half of the 70 years. So don't push the narratives about how Samson died very young because of a woman. Go and check. He says Samson killed more in his death than he was alive. The mission was complete. Go and check the reason for which he was born. He was born because the people were being oppressed by the Philistines. They were being oppressed by those around them. And so they needed a judge. And what did he do? At the end of his life, he made sure that whole destruction is something they would not recover from in a very long time. He lived a fulfilled life. Friends, for too long, the narrative of the church has been that Samson is a lecher. Preachers continue to dwell on the negatives. They continue to dwell on the side of where he went to visit a harlot. They view him only as a symbol of lechery. That is the only way they view him. Now, why they continue to view him as a lecher, why they continue to view him as a sinner, why they continue to view him as a womanizer, why they continue to give him all those views, God sees a son that stayed very faithful to the end. You know, he sees the mission, the complete mission of his life. God sees the son who tapped into grace and would not allow an error to make anyone change what his destiny was. He would not allow that error to rob him of his eternal glory. And that is the story. Friends, that is the real story. Because you cannot call him any name you like anymore. Because call him lecher, call him woman rapper, call him womanizer, call him anything you like. In fact, call him the baddest boy in the Bible. But God sees him as a child of faith. And God himself inspired Paul to write down his name in the hall of faith. How powerful is that? That all your narratives, all the negatives. I mean, I'm not saying that he's a saint. I'm not saying that his sin is covered and his sin is something we should overlook. We're saying that of all those things you continue to dwell upon, that's not where God placed the emphasis upon. The emphasis was placed on Samson in the hall of faith as one who stayed faithful to the very end. And so let me leave you right now with this very important poem. Because I would rather be Samson than some of your preachers. I would rather be Samson than some of your pastors, your bishops, and all those people who ride in those high horses of their righteousness. I would rather be Samson, than be those one who sings of all the bad and the negatives and all the things that we should not be dwelling upon and forget where grace comes in. So I would rather be Samson, you see. I would rather be Samson than be King Solomon. I would rather be him than that one who turned, from the Lord and built high places for foreign gods. I'd rather be Samson than be Solomon. I would rather be Samson than be the king Hezekiah, who, after all his faith, became so proud that he showed to Babylon the treasures of Judea. I would rather be Samson than be you, those accusers of the brethren who turned the church to a brutal tribunal, a sad place of persecution, a sad place of judgment, instead of being a place of grace and pardon. I would rather be Samson than be you. You see, you only remember Samson for Delilah, but our faithful God, the only righteous judge, the one true one, the only true one, he remembers Samson for greatness. He remembers Samson for strength. He remembers him as a hero of faith. And my friends, that is the real story. That is what matters. Faith, grace, salvation. That is all that matters. That is the difference. And I'm hoping that this begins to help us think and rethink the Samson narrative. It has to help us rethink the Samson narrative so that we begin to see certain things from the psychological. We begin to go extra into the place of grace, into the place of faith, into the place of ending well. That's all that matters. How did it end?